We are pleased once again to be joined by and talking with Rabbi Leib Tropper Shlita, and the subject is called Daas Torah Serious Issues. This is part of our Yad LaTorah series with Rabbi Tropper. We know that when one follows the instructions of true Torah leaders, they do not err. And that's the opinion of Chazal and Abbas to Rabbi Nosson. Now, besides the pragmatic benefit of doing right things or doing the right things, doing things right, there is a mandate for Shomrei Torah to listen to our leaders, Daas Torah. And that pertains to some of the issues that we're going to be talking about, whether it's college, the acquisition of wealth, knowing or believing in Hashem, self-esteem, some of the subjects that we'll be talking about in the series. So, Rabbi Tropper, let's begin by asking, what do Chazal, what does Daas Torah suggest regarding, say, attending university?
There are two parts of the issue of attending university, parents, and I want to first thank you for introducing me. There is one thing about studying secular studies, and that there are advocates for doing that. If it's kind of innocuous topics, don't harm religion at all, don't invade religion, and that's math, grammar,
reading, writing,
astronomy, and those engineering, architecture, those things are really just focused on parnasa. They're not focused on anything else but getting a job and working and electrician, all those, whatever. However, if you go into theological studies or philosophical studies or things like even history sometimes, be very careful because it does either contradict some of the things that we are told in the Torah, or it plays out the way the writer of the book views that history as kind of a very biased, a picture of religion, of the history of religion. So therefore, we really have to be careful about those studies that somewhere border or are in the domain of religion. The university issue is another issue which we'll discuss in a short while. There are studies for a person to have a parnasa, to make money, make a lot of money. So, shockingly, Rabbi Zalman Meltzer, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha, in a Sefer Even HaOzel on Hilchos Malachim, I think it's the second parak, when he talks about, he's medayik, he infers from the Rambam's Loshen's language is that a melech, a king, cannot have too many acquisitions because it distracts him from his job, from his focus, and from his heart. It distracts his heart as well. So what's inferred from that is that if only a king can't do that, but a regular Yid, who is just a pedestrian or a citizen of Klal Yisrael, he may do that. So that's what Rabbi Zalman Meltzer says. What is Bittul Torah? How does Bittul Torah come into the picture? How does it play a role in this situation? Bittul Torah is when you're wasting time. Period. When you're not doing anything, but when you're engaged in something productively, something, you're not bodily. That's not called Bittul Torah. The denigration of Torah is when you're exchanging Torah for just wasteless nonsense. That's the denigration of Torah, which is Bittul Torah. You're not pushing it aside if you're working on your career to get a degree of your career and to advance and so on and so forth. That's one thing, one point. The issue with university, as you had mentioned to me when we spoke, is about the mixed environment. Now, I don't know how to answer that question. You need a halachist to answer it. But I could just tell you a story that was very interesting. There's a Talmud who was studying physics in California. And he came to me, he says, Rabbi, he says, I have all the excuses to continue in college. But the mixed environment, I'm not sure I have a legitimate excuse to be there in university. He ultimately left university. I'm not positing as the right choice or the wrong choice, but he felt that it was bothering him. He left university, and today he's kind of a very big Talmud Chacham. A Talmud Chacham. He's a Talmud Chacham of respect. He ended up marrying a Rosh Yeshiva's daughter from Canada, and he was Lakewood, learning nonstop, just taking it serious.
The mixed environment that we're talking about is not necessarily the environment of anti-Torah.
No, mixed environment.
We're talking about between men and women, between
men and women,
which does pose, obviously,
especially if there's like in the springtime, where the tznius level is completely almost gone. There's no level of tznius whatsoever. So in that situation, he was wondering, just if he could just leave. Do I know a heter for him to go to that? Right in front of him is sitting a woman that's not half dressed or not, whatever it may be. So I couldn't answer him that question. I don't know what heter there is. You could tell him, don't look. Well, the Gemara talks about that sikration, but a person can't walk on a certain road where there's preachers, because if there's another road, he better go the other road. Right? Even though you just tell him not to look. Right? I don't think we have. We take into consideration the human reflex, the human impulse, the human desires, the human nature. And we know that people, even though, yes, you should be able to blind your eyes and not see anything for the 5 hours in the morning or afternoon when you're in college, not see anything, but we don't do that. We can't do that. It's almost however, people gedolim, some people, I don't gedolim, but many people did that. They went to university and they graduated. However, there are today Torah colleges, there are universities that don't have that particular issue. Because of that, they made those separate colleges, men and women. Because of that reason, because it is a problem. It is a halachic problem. It is a moral problem, ethical problem, and it is what it is.
The idea of pursuing parnasa, whether it's vis-a-vis college or however the person acquires it, the goal of parnasa is livelihood. What about the idea of somebody, let's say, in a position where they have a choice to take a job where they would have a secure income for the family, and they'll have time to spend with their family and to be able to make kaveh and b'torah, or somebody will be able to pursue actively making an enormous amount of money, but the cost, the premium, will be his time, the time he spends with his family, the time that he spends learning Torah.
Time to do chesed, time for him to do chesed with people. Also.
And to do chesed, of course. So how does Daas Torah help us understand this issue?
It is impossible to imagine that a frum yid who believes in Torah and mitzvahs and believes that there's a most important mitzvah called Shabbos and covered Shabbos should waltz in from his work at home 15 minutes before luch benching and expect to be able to accept, to breathe in the depth of the sweetness of Shabbos. It's impossible. So, just giving you an example before we get to the Asr Mutter part. It is it's a liberating religious perspective to be able to have your own job, your own time to work, and you work engineering, you stop certain times, you go to shul night and learn, and you go have your charusa, and you have your time to do Sundays to do chesed, and so on and so forth. It's not conceivable that a person could remain on a level of frumkeit that he wants his children to be on if he doesn't serve as an example. Remember the Reader's Digest, I remember the quote, it was in 1965, quotable quotes, is that what it's called? The Reader's Digest, it was called. He said, bear in mind that children of all ages close their ears to advice and open their eyes to example. We must bear in mind that our children, for the most part, not every single thing in the world they learn from the parents. Balchuf movement is testimony that they don't learn everything from their parents. But many do. And if you don't have it show kind of disregard, even if you don't mean it, but disregard for the values of chesed and tzedakah and Talmud Torah learning, then your children will look at it that way as well. And even when, this is a fascinating, there's a man, a yid I know, he's now in New Jersey, he's Ish Matzliach. He used to work in mortgages, and he was very, very Matzliach. And he would give a class, shir in the yeshiva, Kol Yaakov at the time, and he would give a shir, and he would, middle of a shmooze that he would be giving, the phone would ring. I remember I was so overwhelmed by this. He would pick up the phone and say, this phone call is a $2 million deal. $2 million. I'm not going to answer it because Torah comes first, and I have bitachon in the Bari Olam that He will either bring back this phone call or it's not meant for it to be. But a phone call in the middle of learning is not meant to be. It's not meant to be, and therefore He just wouldn't answer it. That kind of value of a balabas, he wasn't learning in yeshiva, he was a balabas. There's nothing that can transmit that message better to people than an example from a live situation. So overspending your time trying to be the best in the business, I'm not sure if it'll earn you more money, maybe perhaps it's okay. But just to earn more, and the word more becomes the goal, and this is the word more, not I need more, but just more for the sake of having more. That's the sin of Eitz Hadas. Adam Arishan reliving, that's this person in Brooklyn, Mr. Yankelkorn, that he's living the same thing over again of Adam Arishan. Adam Arishan's chet was what happened. The Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, you have the whole world. It used to be a song like that. You have the whole wide world in your hands. You have the whole world. Just the one thing. Don't touch the Eitz Hadas. Mikol Eitz Hagan, anything from the Eitz Hagan, just eat, enjoy. But the Eitz Hadas, don't touch. And man says, more! I want more. He wants more. And again he wants more. Until an absurd amount of satiation of materialism. The tachlis is to have a parnasa. That's something that meant it's a mitzvah, it's a chiyuv, it's an obligation. He obligated himself when he got married to a spouse that he was going to support her and so on and so forth. For that, he could study. What environment is okay and not okay, you have to ask your Rav. If it's okay in an environment where it's mixed and it's mixed environment, it's mixed gender environment, if that's okay. But we need to be careful. It's not something which shouldn't give a lot of thought. You do not know that the Seif Ma'aseh b'machshava tchila we say in davening. When we see our children who are acquiesce to the wish of the Rebbeinu Shalom with Ava, with Simcha, with Lebedekite, with a fervor, then you know that you did things right. When you see that they're hardly interested because you weren't interested. You weren't really. You had to go to shul. Your wife had to kick you out. Out of the house to go to shul to learn, to meet your charusa, go to Shia. So if the child sees that, there's no passion, there's no gemutlachkeit, there's no patima, there's nothing in that of your Yiddishkeit that you're doing with such dveikus in the Bari Olam, that passes on to the children. So after the question of university, I'm just telling you that's something that you have to ask your Rav, because it depends the reason why you're going, or whether you can go. What you have these things in. I mean, would you know parents some kind of a leniency if just people come with bathing suits into a class, like in Florida in the summertime? I don't know of a leniency. I don't know. Unless you take off your glasses and you don't see anybody, you bump into 15 people at one time, which is worse than seeing. As you can see, not to bump into what you shouldn't bump into. You know what I mean? It's like it's kind of tough call,
especially when the professor shows up like that.
Right, that's right, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, the other thing is that, like I mentioned before, Rav Zalman's idea of the pursuit of wealth. Not everybody agrees that you're allowed to pursue wealth. The Rambam's Loshin in Hilchos Talmud Torah says a person should work until he has parnasa. But Rav Zalman's chiddush is that you can go beyond that. And if you want to become rich, you can become rich. It's not bittul Torah because you're occupied in something. You're
Rabbi Tropper, thank you very much on this particular segment of Daas Torah, serious issues, and we're going to be talking further about other inyanim that pertain to these issues. One of the things that somebody brought up that I know, Rabbi Tropper, that you have very strong feelings and also tremendous insight into. A person will say something like, okay, so fine, I believe that there is one Hashem, there's one God, but how does that knowledge, that belief even, mitigate my suffering? Person's going through suffering. How does knowing that there is Hashem, believing in Kadosh Baruch Hu, mitigate the person's suffering?
There is no such thing as suffering without Hashem's involvement. And when a person has a charusa like the Bari Olam, the Avar Rahman, in his suffering, and then it's automatically tempers the pain, softens the pain. Hashem is with you. Imay enochi b'tzara, b'chol tzarasam lo tzara. Even this Russian philosopher, I forgot his name, wrote a big book. It's called God is in Pain. He's brilliant. He's up and coming in the world of philosophy. His name is mentioned many times, Nizhak or something like that. He has a book called God in Pain, and he's very much pro-religion. He believes in God. And he says, his claim is that kind of countering the offense of those people who say, "Where God, the Holocaust, where God?" He says he was right there. He was right there, because if we believe that b'chol tzarosam lo tzar, the Eibishter is with Klal Yisrael in every tzar, and it says in so many times in the Chumash and Tanakh and over again. I mean, why would the Eibishter make tzar to be in part of that tzar? I mean, if it's just for that there is no God? So you have to believe first to hear that what the pasuk says, that b'chol tzarosam lo tzar, the Eibishter is with Klal Yisrael in every single individual pain, and in collective pain. So Hashem is with us. So this is an abbreviated version of what I wanted to answer on this discussion. I wanted to respond that knowing Hashem is there, like Hashem holding your hand. So what does that mean, Hashem holding your hand? So the Al Shech HaKadosh in Parshas Dvarim, in Parshas Vayelach, pasuk says that when it comes to tragedy, collective tragedy, it says, "V'anochi haster panim emahu," I will hide my face from them. So the Alshach asks, what's the big deal? I mean, if you're talking about Jewish mothers be slaughtered in half, children's heads beheaded, so Hashem is getting the last thing is God is going to go and hide Himself that you cannot see Him. What is big? So that's nothing compared to the punishment itself. She says no. Al Shach HaKadosh says also beautifully, says when we have a father who slaps his child or punishes his child, we know that the Father, the Rahman, is going to stop. But when something stranger, the stranger is hitting you, the stranger is beating your child, you don't know when it's going to end. When Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, "V'anochi, you, me, Avinu Malkeinu," that you scream, Avinu Malkeinu, you scream to me, Avinu Malkeinu, I'm with you. But then at that time, Klal Yisrael is so bad. I'm going to hide myself, and you won't even know it's your father that's hitting you. You'll think it's a stranger. And then who knows? For how long? For what? How many Kadeshim will there be before the days of punishment expire? That's why it's important to know, to be tuned into this fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's one, He's the Father of Klal Yisrael, of every one of us.
You know, Rabbi Tropper, this leads to something which really precedes all of this, which is that the belief, the knowledge in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is there a difference in knowing that there's Hashem and believing in Hashem? And what exactly is our obligation as members of Klal Yisrael to know that there is Hashem or to believe that there is a God?
There are a lot of Rosh Yeshiva, of Kiruv Yeshivas that try to expound on this, and I find that a lot of fallacious thinking in some of their ideas. I'm not criticizing them because they may have Makarish sources that may be valid, but in my opinion, it's fallacious thinking. And the only thing I could say is what others say. I don't feel myself on the level to say things than the Gedolei Yisrael have said before. Rav Shach in Hilchos Mada, Hilchos Deis, he talks about this question. He said that he asked this question. There's a steer in the Rambam. One Rambam it says you should know God. One Rambam says you should believe in God. Sefer Mitzvah says one thing, and the Sefer Rambam says another thing. So he said that he asked the Brisker Rav this question, and the Brisker Rav said to him, Rav Shach, I asked this question to my father, Reb Chaim Brisk. And Reb Chaim Brisk told him the follows. He said, even in Emunah where you believe, even in Emunah where we truly believe doesn't mean, it still means believe, that we don't know. Mm-hmm. We believe. And even when we know, we don't know everything. We can't know everything. In other words, a person says, I have proof. I have proof. I'm going to throw chalk at a blackboard, and the chalk is going to break. That's proof. Same thing with the Abish to the world. It has an order. Chalk breaks. You can't change. You can't just make up your own rules. There's rules in the world that chalk is a blackboard is a hard object, and as hard as that is, chalk is a soft object, and chalk breaks. That's not a proof. Why is it an proof? It's because you'd have to stand there from the beginning of history till the end of history to chalk the blackboard every minute in order to find out if that's true. Maybe one time the blackboard will break. Who knows? So Moran Rav Shach Lichatalik Levracha writes, says, where the limit of knowledge ends, we fill the gap with emunah. We fill that gap with emunah. We say, you know what? Right, I have this and this proof, that and that proof. Mathematical. It's all about mathematical proof. It's obvious. But the person says to you, but for it, I mean, it's not 100%. I mean, maybe. That maybe, you need to have emunah. You have to have belief. That's Rav Shach. So if you could look at it in the Sefer, I urge you to look at the Sefer to see if I'm mistaking what he says, but I'm pretty sure that's what he says. And I remember what he says. And I spoke to him once about that, and he told me over the same thing. So that's his response. More importantly, I just can't forget this. This is the most important thing. I mentioned it once, I'll mention it again, I'll end with this. The Rambam says in the Haggadah, the Sefer HaMitzvahs, he writes that the whole purpose of Kriyas HaMegillah on Purim is to read the story. What's the story? How do you understand it? What is the story? What is the story of Purim? Tell me, Bert, what do you think the story of Purim is?
Minahapahu, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu overturned that which looked like it was going to be death and disaster and destruction into life and the complete Yeshua, the complete redemption of
that's the most common answer. The Rambam doesn't sign up to that, subscribe to that particular answer. He has a different nuance. It's close, but it's a different nuance. He says the lesson of Purim is, there's one part of Purim it says in the Megillah, it says that Esther said to Mordechai, Lech kenoises kol Yehudim, gather all the Jews in this trouble that we have. Vitzumu olai on the reisai shleishis yomim, and let's just fast, and me that I should go into power and ask him the question, and fast for me and daven for me, that we should have help. There's no one else to help. That's the message of Megillah. That's the message of the story of Purim. And he ends like this. This is what he says. He says, the message of Purim is to understand, Ki mi kashem elekeinu, asher karav eleinu b'chol karenu elov, who is like our God in heaven, the merciful God that's so close to us, in all our appeals to him, that he will save us, redeem us, and bring us back to the happiest place on the planet, Yerushalayim HaKodesh.
Amen. Rabbi Tropper, thank you very much. We hope to continue the series Yad Torah and Daas Torah, serious issues which we indeed take seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.